Yo, and welcome to the EPM show. This is all things enterprise performance management. I'm Blake Bozarth, your host. Chad Pike's not here with us today, but we have an incredible guest today, Kait Chura. She's a Master Anaplanner in that elite status. We've had a couple of these on the show, and Travis San Pedro, if you remember his episode, he shouted Kait out. She's the reason that he got into this whole EPM world and discovered the tool called Anaplan. And Kait does not disappoint. We're talking about storytelling today. And we dove into storytelling a little bit with Chris Ortega, if you remember that episode. Kait breaks it down, I think, in a unique way. And that's no surprise because she also has a very non-traditional background, does not have a finance background. She has a retail background, worked her way up through Apple and in the supply chain side of the house, and then got exposed to the finance side of the house. And she talks about what does it look like for her to be able to tell stories and translate for herself and her own benefit, and then how that impacts the way she deals with clients and with business partners as well. Some great practical nuggets in this episode, and I think you're going to enjoy it. She has a great sense of humor, and it's a fun episode. All right, without further ado, let's jump into the show. Our goal is to give you an unfair career advantage. So our guest today to help us do that is the one and only Kait Chura. Kait, welcome to the EPM show.
Hey, how's it going, Blake?
Doing great. So we like to start off with our patented question just to get to know you. We're going to give you 60 seconds. We use a little timer, give you 60 seconds and let you tell us about you and your career. Go for it.
All right. So I am originally from Bozeman, Montana. I moved to Texas to go to Rice University. I studied sport management and film there. Goal was to work for ESPN. Ended up working in a retail store in Apple instead. From that, transitioned into a management program within Apple. From that, decided to go get my master's in strategic communication because I saw there was a huge opportunity in internal communication. So I did that for a little bit. Moved back to Apple, worked in their supply chain. And at that point, I had a friend named Fabian who reached out to me and said, hey, I've got this tool called Anaplan. I think you'd be really good at it. You want to come and join me at this consulting firm? So I went to a consulting firm, worked there for about 3 years, and now I work for a company called LiveRamp in there, managing their one model.
That was great.
60 seconds.
Hey, so because you have time, I got to hear more about the sports background. Okay. Who's your team, or college or pro? Who are you most passionate about?
Okay, I'm a huge Houston Rockets fan. I actually have a female dog named Harden because of the Houston Rockets. So she's my pride and joy, but she's named after a guy with a big beard and all that kind of stuff. People always think it's like Harper. It's like another version of Harper. It's like, it's not, but that's fine. And then I love the Cowboys because I'm in Dallas now. And I actually like the LA Dodgers because they've been a fun team to watch for baseball.
Look at you. You got some diversity in there too.
I'm a free agent. I'm from Montana. No one can judge my bandwagon fandom, I guess.
You have reasons for it all. Harden, what a great name for a dog. That's amazing. So our other fun question for you is, if you could have lunch with anybody, Kait, sit down, have lunch, past or present, who would that person be?
So it's going to change every week, I'll be honest with you, Blake, but I have just finished House of the Dragon, and so I would probably say Matt Smith right now. His character in House of the Dragon, the Queen, all these different things has been so incredible. I just actually started watching Doctor Who. It's so good. So I'm just talking to this guy. I'd love to just hang out and talk with him. And I don't know, we could just talk over. He was really witty. I actually saw him talk once. And so I'd like to have lunch then.
All right. So you have somebody new
no
for me to look
idea
up. This goes
right?
straight over my head. I have zero idea what's happening right now.
Have you seen The Crown? Have you seen The Crown?
I've seen a couple episodes. Yes. I've not seen the series. I shouldn't say that, but I know about it.
The first season, Prince Philip is also who he is. If you've seen One Night in Soho, he's also in that. He's the evil dude in that Edgar Wright movie. I don't know. So there's some off. You've seen him.
Hey, you're giving me. I'm sure I will recognize the character. I'm gonna look up. I want to look it up, Kait. This is great. So hey, our topic today, our main theme that we're talking about, which I think is very pertinent for so many listening to the show, is how can we become better at storytelling? I know that's something that you're passionate about. So talk to us a little bit about, how do you think about storytelling as an Anaplan model builder, as a solution architect, master Anaplanner now? How do you think about storytelling? How has it served you in your career?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think at my start is because I have that sports background, movies like Rudy and those different inspirational movies. Remember the Titans?
That one I know.
There were all these different things that like always always resonated with me, right? The rookie, I don't know, you could probably go through that whole gap of things. And it was always like, as I wasn't playing these sports, it still connected with me on the emotional level. And so that kind of planted the seed to me when it comes to really thinking about storytelling, because even though I wasn't living those experiences, the concept of it was still relatable. So fast forward, I actually, when I started working in the retail store, at the Apple retail store in the Houston Galleria, one of the things that really kind of I learned quickly was that in order for people to understand technology and to consume it, they needed to understand what was happening within those devices and why you might upgrade your RAM and things along those lines. And this is like the whole stream of people, right? Like I talk to doctors who definitely went to medical school and have all that experience. I talked to NBA basketball players who had come in. I talked to people who were just traveling there for oil and gas, and every single person didn't understand technology. So we always used analogies, like we'd compare it to a car, or we'd compare it to, I mean, I'm running out of them right now, of course, but we would compare it to something that somebody does have experience with. And so that's the thing that storytelling has also been what I've carried forward. You can tell from my background, it's very non-traditional, right? I've jumped around a lot of places, and everyone kind of is, that can seem like not a good life decision, but it's actually only helped me the entire time, because even when I was getting my master's, I had been working in a retail store. My master's was in strategic communication. But as I was learning all of these concepts, it was, okay, let me translate that into something I've actually experienced. And in doing so, by translating into something I've experienced, I was then able to retain the information. And so fast forward again into working at Apple in their supply chain, but going into Anaplan, I was supposed to be hired to do supply chain things, and I was thrown on finance things. And I am someone who absolutely cannot tell you what EBITDA stands for. I learned that a balance sheet equals zero in this process. I'm not that person.
Right,
but
right.
at the what was interesting is that it was the translation of part numbers into dollars, which was how finance consumes the data. It was the translation of stores into cost centers. That is how they create an FP&A or a P&L. So it's all these different things, whereas like you don't necessarily have to understand their concept, but if you can translate it into a story that you can understand, that's like the first step in grasping the information. And so that's kind of like, at least on a personal scale, where I've like really connected with storytelling, and it's how I've actually leveraged it to better my career.
That's really cool. And honestly, asking you that, I wasn't anticipating the front end of this being, I got good at storytelling, or it served me because it's actually helped me make sense of things myself. And so it starts there, because I think of like storytelling as, oh, it's about the person that we're storytelling for. But as you first got into this field, it was storytelling for yourself, making sense of it for yourself first. And then maybe talk to us about that latter part. If once it's made sense to you, how has storytelling helped you when you're working with clients, when you're working with business leaders, different operational areas, so forth?
So first side of that is obviously the fact that I worked in that technology space with like really powerful people. I'm not afraid to ask a CFO a question. I understand that they're a C-level executive. That's very respectable to me. Obviously, it's a goal one day. Who knows? Not that, obviously, not finance. But at the same time, like it is such a huge, it's a huge piece of the whole puzzle, right? Is they don't understand what I know, for one. So keeping that in mind, I now have to uncover what they do understand. And usually, obviously, with a tool like Anaplan, or a tool that like really is that connected planning solution, it is, what is the goal? Like, what is the experience you're looking to have with this tool? So then I can cater how the end user uses it, no matter who they are, based off how they're going to, what their expectations are of that tool. Because I do think of Anaplan as white canvas, right? And you can paint anything you want on that canvas. Yes, data is boring, but what we create with data is not boring. I just need to know what story I need to tell when I talk to that person. And it usually has to be, in what context are they expecting that story? Because like I said, if I talk to supply chain, they might care about it as an MPN or a SKU or as an item number. If I talk to sales, they care about it in how it translates to their personal commission. They don't necessarily even care what products they're selling as long as their commission goes up. Finance only cares about if the revenue is increasing and the expenses are offsetting that, or they're still positive, negative. You know what I'm talking about. So like 3 different audiences, but it's the same data. It's the same exact data. So I just need to make sure that how I position it to them is not in a supply chain context if I'm talking to finance. They don't really care, because if they've purchased products, they should be in there to be able to be sold. Why are they not getting sold? Might be the question that happens. And then you have to talk to sales. But that's the trick, right? Is like, this is why I love Anaplan. And this is my whole point, is when I was going back in time, when I was working in supply chain at Apple, we literally were in the same room. We'd have a finance person there, we'd have a salesperson there, and we'd have our supply chain team there. And we all had to talk about the same data in our own measurements. And the problem with supply chain, for example, it's a moving target, especially at a place like Apple. Every time you push a button, the number changes. So if I push a button 5 minutes before somebody else, our numbers are off, and now we're spending 3 hours bridging our data. And so a tool like Anaplan solves that. And so that was like, personally to me, consuming Anaplan, learning Anaplan, that was why I was like, oh, I'm motivated to learn this, because I want to solve that problem, because that problem caused me a lot of heartache, me as an empath towards that situation. And so then I carried that forward to all these other teams that then I was in charge of working with. So that's kind of the overall gist of that.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Talk to me, if you're somebody who's hearing this and is like, okay, this is really helpful to kind of bring to life, what does it mean to storytell? And maybe it's somebody who the technical comes natural to them, whether it's the technical kind of finance analyst background and they do speak that lingo, or whether it's some other kind of particular field, or whether it's just the technical in terms of the model building itself inside the platform, be it Anaplan, be it whatever software solution they're using. But maybe the storytelling doesn't come natural to them, right? How would do you have any tips for somebody to be able to get better at telling the story with data?
I mean, I think the first tip I would say is watch movies, read books. Like, it is all that's like, I told you, like, my examples are things that I connected with, but they had nothing to do with it, right? So like, one of the concepts that I've learned recently with LiveRamp is we have annual recurring revenue. We're a software as a solution, so everyone signs up for an annual contract. Right? That being said, I personally have never been in the position of these companies that are buying this. However, I have been the person that has bought a gym membership before. So buying a gym membership is you sign up for 1 year contract. If I don't renew that, I'm churned now. I no longer spend that money. The company no longer gets to forecast that recurring revenue otherwise. If I decide to pay for personal training at that point, now I'm an upsell. I am paying more than expected per month. And so that gets to get carried forward free. Or if I downsell and I had personal training and I no longer need it, then that's now downsell. I'm still a member, but not as much as what was forecasted. So that's just translating that situation from something that happens at a corporate scale to something that happens at a personal scale. So that's kind of what I would think about, is you don't necessarily have to think about it in let me find the perfect story. You just have to find something that does relate to someone. And like, the reason why I have that example, I'll be 100% honest, is because there's a comic named Ryan Hamilton who has a hilarious joke about it. And that joke set with me because it's all about trying to cancel a gym membership and how hard it was. And I was like, gosh, yeah, gym memberships are really hard to cancel and all that stuff. And so I was like, wait a second, that's an annual contract. And it was something that it took me a while to translate it to myself. But I also think that someone who's technical, we take it even one step further. You had to learn a new language by learning how to write Anaplan. So you did somehow connect it to maybe Excel, and that's a different experience. Or you connected it to some other math problem that you learned, algebra. You know, those different pieces are actually possibly more parallel experiences to one of our end users. So you could talk to them in that context. I mean, Excel is easily one of our best tools, I'd say, because usually someone from finance or supply chain has used Excel. So, hey, can you just show me how you would engage with this data in Excel? And then maybe I can carry that story forward.
That's so good. And I love the emphasis on thinking outside the confines of maybe your current context and doing that intentionally, because the more that you can create or bring something created to the table, it actually helps people relate, but also remember. So the examples that you gave in terms of watching movies, or this comedian made me think of this, and that actually it interrupts kind of the normal day-to-day of whatever our context is. And it not only helps us maybe understand better and let us relate it to something that's more relatable, but it also makes it stand out and makes us remember and keep that. And I think that's why, like, most people are honestly, Kait, I think most people would say that we are drawn to storytellers. If somebody's really gifted at being able to tell a story and do it in a way that is engaging, compelling, and also relatable, that person, and we see this time and time again with the in the talent space, right? Especially in a talent space that is more technical in nature, standouts are the ones that have the technical skills. Like that's kind of the table stakes, but the standouts are the ones that have the soft skills, influencing skills. But one of the biggest ways that you influence is by being able to tell stories well. And so that really stands out for me. I want to ask you this. You also talked about Kait having a non-traditional background. That's something I know we talked about. Our mutual friend, Travis and Pedro, who gave you a shout out last time. You're the reason why he got into this whole space. Talk to us a little bit about what's your perspective. You're talking to somebody
right now.
That's right. Reverse shout out right there. There you go, Travis. If you're talking to somebody who does come from a non-traditional background, they didn't study anything business or finance or econ related in college. They maybe have like a retail background or something else like that, and they're interested in this space. They discover the space. What advice would you have for them?
One thing that's really cool about Anaplan is you can just do level 1 and level 2 by yourself. And I tell everyone that because the whole idea, and a lot of times when you're thrown into the world itself, like if you were to instead go for the getting hired first, it might be fine. But I actually think that does throw you more into a learning environment that's going to be catered towards the masses, not catered towards you individually. And like I said, a lot of these things that I've talked about are strengths that I personally have that others can benefit for. Because I have a non-traditional background, I think I've been forced to be more curious and to think different and things along those lines and figure out a way that forces myself to learn something. I was definitely hired at a time when there was no training. There was no training really. They just said, hey, do level 1 yourself. If you can get it done this week, that would be great. But I was also put on a project right away. And that's going to happen. And so I would say if you're curious about this, do level 1 and 2 on your own. Anaplan will give you a temporary workspace. You can do the training for free. And if it connects with you, like it's connected with me or we're connected with other people that have been on this podcast, I think then that's a really, really good indication for a really fast track to excelling your career within this space too. Like your ability to do it yourself, because a lot of what we're doing is getting something out of nothing. Like I really think that it's a white canvas idea. There's no right way of doing it necessarily. Like, yes, there are better ways, obviously. But the reality is if you can understand it, you will learn the advantage of those right ways rather than someone telling you. It's like when you used to have to do algebra in a long algebra, and then someone all of a sudden hands you a calculator, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is so much easier, but you understand how the calculator works. It's the same thing with a tool like Anaplan, is if you can learn the tool, then you're going to actually process it better than if you just go for the job first. So that's my first advice, is definitely to learn it. The second thing is that if you've already got your foot in the door, struggle. And I mean that in the best possible way, because I think that the most rewarding feeling when it comes to this kind of an environment and this work environment is that aha moment. Like that moment where all of a sudden you feel like the smartest person in the entire world because you figured out something that you didn't know how to do like 10 minutes prior, or even like 3 hours prior, or even a day prior. Like when you were writing the user story and it was something that you were like, what the heck is a balance sheet? And then all of a sudden someone tells you it equals 0 and you're like, okay, I can figure that out. That's the benefit, right? That's what makes this environment and this career so fruitful, is that I have the ability to go, oh my gosh, I feel so smart, and I gotta go dance with my dog and get really excited about it, and then eat some ice cream later tonight because I reward myself over it. Struggling is good. It's part of learning, and it does not mean you can't learn it. It just means that it's not as easy as you thought it was going to be. That's fine. You just have to figure that out, and then I'd say the last thing is that this is not hard math. I have a non-traditional background. It is not difficult math at all. And if you are someone who says, oh, I wasn't that great at math, algebra 2 is probably how hard this math is. You're not getting into exponents really. You're not getting into all those weird like square roots or any of that stuff for the most part. This is very basic math, and you can mainly do most of it on your calculator on your phone if you need to validate that the numbers work. So don't let the math aspect of the technical data scare you from something.
Boom. That's some great stuff right there for somebody who's considering this. And we get asked that question a lot. You just broke it down with three great points there that I think just is incredible for somebody who's looking for, hey, I'm intrigued by this. I've heard about this, but I'm intimidated by it, or I don't know quite how to dip my toe in. Really good. So let me ask you this. So you've achieved elite status in the Anaplan ecosystem with the Master Anaplanner designation. What has your career progression looked like, Kait, when it comes from when you first discovered this whole platform and tool and this whole kind of field? And what do you think have been the biggest, I guess, drivers towards your career success?
I think the biggest driver is curiosity, and I'm also an autonomy. I like both of those two things, right? Is I am someone who does get curious about what the tool is capable of doing, and I will then go and try and figure it out. I like working by myself. I work in a remote environment right now. I don't need to be in an office, which is great. But I'm also very good at working alone because I'm not afraid of hopping on a Zoom if I need to. But at the same time, like there are times when I need to just zone in to what I'm working on. So that's been a big driver for me, is figuring out a way that I can stand on my own and really still see a progression in my career. And I think that's from the beginning, right? I've always been remote since I started working in Anaplan, even when in my previous career in the consulting firm is like, I started out as an associate because I had some real world experience that they recognized. I moved into senior associate after a year. I moved into a manager 6 months later. And then after that, I decided to transition into the industry because I need to give myself, honestly, a break. And I'm saying that in a very positive way. It's just that consulting is very overwhelming, but I get to own one model and I get to own the creativity of one model. And that's really exciting to me because I can mold this into exactly what I want it to be. If we can get it to be sustainable and have as few of like kind of improvements and enhancements as possible, or just only enhancements, no improvements, that would be a huge win for me. And so that motivates me as well. But in general, I'd say that the other thing that drives me is creativity. Like Anaplan, yes, is data, but at the end of the day, like that doesn't mean it has to be boring. And I pride myself on trying to figure out ways to incorporate. I do have a marketing background and I did film. Like I do care about how things look visually. So that's a huge motivator for me as well, and again, go back to that storytelling. Can this tell that story to a new user without me having to give them a full walkthrough? And if it can't, that doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means that we have to work towards improving it later on in the line.
And along those lines, the visual tie-in, the storytelling, you've written an article I know you put out for the community on brand standards and how you incorporate that. You want to summarize that real quick?
Yeah, like a short kind of thing. You can find it on community. Basically, the whole idea is that it's very jarring if you don't keep things consistent for end users, because I use the example of if you use the wrong yellow and red, you're not going to think McDonald's. You're going to be like, this looks fake. But that's kind of the whole idea, right? Is that if you can keep the entire model consistent, you will actually have a better buy-in from your end users by using the same gray, by using the same red to highlight, to look somewhere. If you can incorporate your actual company's colors into it, because most marketing teams will provide that to you, it can then also, once again, go to those C-level executives and they will see it as a real product. They won't see it as a temporary thing. They'll be like, how do I export this exactly how this looks right now? Because I could put this in front of an investor and they will feel good about this. So I created a way that put those hex codes into Anaplan in a very easy location where you can just copy and paste it across. Obviously, we can't update those 32, but if you create a worksheet, it can allow you the ability to do that. It's also where you could put different logos if you wanted to on a worksheet, so they could choose which logo they wanted to use, because we all have different iterations of our logos. It's basically about not limiting Anaplan to what it is out of the box, but also utilizing those customizable features to make sure that it is a very professional tool. So that's the goal of that brand standards that I created.
That's so cool. And you can find all that detail. It's a really great, helpful, practical article and ties in so great with our topic today around storytelling. Okay, this has been a blast. Thanks so much for coming on the show, being part of this. Thanks for getting Travis into this world and inspiring him. I know you're inspiring others as well. And it's just been so fun to actually get to chat with you.
This has been great. I love geeking out over it. So people can reach out to me if they have any questions or any of that stuff.
Awesome. And where's the best place to find you?
Best place to find me, obviously, I'm on LinkedIn like everybody else. If you like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, I also live tweet that on my Twitter. So same names though.
Okay. Now we know. This is great. Hey, this is so fun. Appreciate you and look forward to seeing all that you continue to do going forward.
Sounds great. Thanks, Blake.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Wherever you're consuming this, if it's YouTube, if it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, We appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed. We have a lot more amazing guests on the way, a lot more great content. We're doing our best to bring you value and have fun while we do it. We really want this to be a career advantage, listening to this show, and we want you to enjoy it. So it means a lot. Make sure you're subscribed for what's to come. And also, if you're up for it, it would mean a lot if you leave us a like, a comment, a rating, a review, whatever platform you're on. That really helps, and it gets us fired up when we see those. So I appreciate you guys. Find us on LinkedIn. I'm Blake Bozarth, my co-host Chad Pike with a Y. Would love to connect with you there. Have an awesome day. See you next time. Peace.